Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone in the franchise world. My name is Paul Segreto, and this is Franchise Today. You need only look to the IFA Annual Convention programming to know what issues are front and center with today's franchise professionals. As we continue to struggle with a sluggish economic recovery and uncertainty in the regulatory arena, the IFA Convention was the perfect forum for proactively tackling the critical issues and finding solutions to prepare franchise professionals for future growth. These were the words of today's guest, CEO and President of the IFA, Steve Caldeira, as we headed into the recently completed IFA Convention in Orlando. And, of course, Steve is no stranger to Franchise Today, having been on the show last year, and we'll introduce him here in just a moment. Also joining me is co-producer of Franchise Today and well-known industry professional, Joe Caruso. Joe, how are you today?
Excellent, Paul. Great to be here as usual.
Well, we certainly have a hot time ahead of us in franchising, with coming out of the IFA convention, which was, of course, was a great success, and leading into multi-unit franchising, small business lending summit, IFA legal symposium, the franchise unconference, and a host of other events in between. And, of course, we like to think that Franchise Today contributes to that as well, as we have a very hot lineup, very, very IFA-concentric over the next few weeks. Who do we have, Joe?
Well, next week we have Nancy Weingartner from Franchise Times, and she's going to be talking about franchising and a lot of the articles and future issues of the magazine. Lonnie Helgerson will be with us, and he's going to be doing a show on military and franchising, focusing on the VetFranProgram, followed up by Catherine Monson of Fast Signs, who will be discussing going international with their recent introduction of the Fast Signs brand in Puerto Rico. We'll be doing a replay of our Bob Coleman lending show, followed right on with Ron Feldman of doing a show on franchise finance. Brad Fishman will be talking about the Franchise Unconference, which will have concluded on the 29th, followed up by the Small Business Lending Summit show. Then we'll be going into our third annual Franchise Legal Series, which will begin on April 12th and end on May 24th. And we're just finishing up the lineup of all of the attorneys and their topics. So there'll be more news to come on the Franchise Legal Series, one of the most popular segments of episodes on Franchise Today.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. There was a lot of buzz about that amongst the legal minds at the IFA convention. Talked with Lee Plave, who's going to be on the show, as well as in the series, as well as Warren Lewis, there'll be Jonathan Redgrave, Leslie Curran, just a bunch of great legal minds, and, of course, Lane Fisher as well. We've got a lot to talk about today, so I'm going to head right into today's feature. We have Steve Caldeira on, IFA CEO and President, entering his second year at the helm. We're hot off the IFA Convention 2012, which was held at the Orlando World Center Marriott. The IFA Convention was better and bigger than 2011, and 2011 was a great convention. But this year's event began with keynote Bill O'Reilly, finishing with Guy Kawasaki, which was a great closing session send-off. The gala was moved up a day this year, and it was really great attendance and great music by the Franchise All-Star Band. And now, to cap that all off, we're joined by IFA President and CEO Steve Caldeira. Steve, welcome again to Franchise Today.
Hey, Paul. It's great to be with you and Joe, as always, and thanks for those nice comments on the convention.
Oh, it really was great. I mean, it seemed like there were so many more people this year, and on the flight home with Doc Cohen back to Houston, he was telling me that it was closing in on record attendance, and as busy it was, I only got to see what appeared to be just a little tiny Steve Caldeira at the stage, because I was in the back of the room during the opening session and never ran into you. It was just so much going on. It really was a great event. You and the IFA team certainly did not disappoint. Stellar job with the convention. Congratulations with your second IFA convention under your leadership.
Thanks a lot, Paul. And as always, the goal is to provide your membership with relevant and timely information on a whole array of topics, including what is happening on the economic and public affairs front, both at the federal and state levels, respectfully reminding them of the public policy issues that can have potentially negative and costly effects to their businesses, and why it's important to share their views with their congressmen, their congresswomen, and senators as part of our Franchise Congress advocacy efforts. And I also spoke to the fact of why it's critically important to support FranPac as part of an overall strategy to better educate members of Congress on the job-creating prowess of the franchising industry, as growing our PAC allows us to support more pro-business federal lawmakers and candidates wider and deeper and moving forward. And as my good friend Tom Donahue, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce's president and CEO, always says, politics always trumps policy. And what he means by that is that if we don't get the politics right, i.e., re-electing current pro-business lawmakers and prospective pro-business candidates, then bad policy will follow. And that's what we've got now here in Washington, too much partisan rancor, negative rhetoric, and as we all know, major gridlock on a whole host of issues important to expediting and paving the way for recovery and growth, which is how we captured our theme in our 2011 annual report. As I also said, Paul, in my State of the Association speech, elections have consequences, and both franchisors and franchisees want to know what our tax system is going to look like. How are we going to reduce our rising federal debt and cut spending? They also want to know, what will be the true costs of health care on their business as the rules are implemented and it's fully rolled out in 2014. And they also have ongoing concerns about the new financial regulations doing more harm than good when it comes to providing credit to small businesses. And lastly, I'd say, IFA members are always looking for new and innovative ideas to build and strengthen their businesses. So we're always trying to provide, a whole host of educational sessions and seminars to meet their needs of staying relevant and vibrant in what is a still very challenging economic and public policy environment.
Well, certainly the messages continue to resonate throughout the entire convention from day one all the way through heading to the airport. I know the buzz was great. The activity was great. The excitement level was higher than I've seen it in a couple of years. Yeah. And I think definitely it just was a great event. Leading into it, I know having been involved with the convention committee, there's a lot that goes into this, a lot more than anybody could imagine. But if you would have really focused down on a couple of key goals and objectives leading into the 2012 convention, what were they, Steve?
Well, again, it's back to delivering ROI and value add for your existing members and prospective members. This was the second year, Paul, that we used the mobile app in conjunction with the convention, and it's been very popular with attendees. And they can download all of their the event's content. They can create their own schedule and do all the things that you can do with a mobile app. We also, for the first time ever, did a philanthropic related event thanks to our good friends at Rourke Capital, led by Steve Romanello and Jeff Hill and the folks at Focus Brands. And it was an event that brought together, I'd say, approximately 100 franchise industry leaders and IFA members, and we provided everything from landscaping services to building flower beds, sanding and staining outdoor decks and patio areas, in addition to having our volunteers visiting with patients at the Orlando Rehabilitation Services Facility. And that primarily caters to disabled veterans and their families who need both medical attention and psychological attention and services. So as you can imagine, it was both a very moving and rewarding day for all of us that were involved. And I'm confident that we'll continue some version of Franchising Gives Back each year at our convention. As you know, all our businesses are local, and franchising is involved in so many philanthropic charities and events and initiatives, and we like to say, building local businesses one opportunity at a time. And with that opportunity to build that business, we know that our industry always gives back to the community in which they serve. So we're going to continue along those lines, relative to something along the lines of franchising gives back. It may change every year in terms of where we focus our efforts, but I think this will stick for the long haul.
I think the franchising gives back, as you mentioned, was just a fabulous event. But I think what was really impressive, there was some very high-ranking leaders in franchising that were involved in it. I know saw pictures of Susan Blackbeth, who also won an IFA award this year.
Sure.
Dina Dwyer-Owens, as busy
Yep.
as she's been with everything going on since CBS Undercover Boss. I mean, she was there. I mean, that just speaks volumes about the commitment that franchising has to the community. I think that's just great.
Yeah. Jack Earl, he just left as chairman. Jack was also there. We had several officers, past chairman Russ Frith and Doc Cohen, and others, Steve Siegel, and several existing board members, Harry Loyal, and just volunteers from within the IFA community and staff, and it was very, very rewarding. And it's and that we have a great focus on veterans this year. We can get into that in a minute, but to see the folks in there, these veterans, and what they've been through to fight for our freedom and liberty, it's just so rewarding to be able to do something that makes their living environment that much easier for them to navigate and be a part of. So we're very thankful again for Steve Romanello and Jeff Hill at Roar Capital for conceiving this idea, and I just think it's terrific, and we're going to continue to work on that moving forward.
Absolutely, and I think even though we have in some of our preparation for today in our notes to talk about VetFran and military and franchising a little later in the show, I think it's probably appropriate to bring it front and center right now.
Sure.
As you mentioned, military is a big bringing military into franchising is a continued push that started with VetFran back in 1991 under past IFA Chairman Don Dwyer. What's new with VetFran for 2012? Well,
you're absolutely right. The late Don Dwyer started VetFran back in 1991. It's still a strategic initiative of the IFA. We revamped it after 9/11 and relaunched it this past Veterans Day with a new initiative called Operation Enduring Opportunity. And Operation Enduring Opportunity is a commitment by the franchising industry to hire and recruit 75,000 veterans and 5,000 wounded warriors as small business owners and team members by the end of 2014. We're working very closely with First Lady Michelle Obama's Joining Forces initiative in the White House, as well as the U.S. Chamber of Commerce's Hiring Our Heroes program to really educate and promote what we're doing relative to the hiring and recruiting process and franchising. It's been a very powerful program. Right now we have over 450 companies participating in VetFran and supporting both financially the initiative as well as offering discounts on initial franchise fees to prospective veteran franchisees. You have companies like the UPS store that has waived their initial franchise fee for the first 10 honorably discharged veterans that meet the criteria. So and then other companies that are just either waiving the fee or reducing the initial franchise fee. Aaron's Rents has committed to hire 500 veterans over the next 3 years. I mean, that's just incredible. And so there are other companies sending in their pledges each and every day. It's a big number. It's a big target. But when you look at the fact, Paul, that according to the U.S. Census, we have over 66,000 veteran franchise businesses in franchising. And the reason why Don Dwyer started VetFran, because he saw a unique and direct correlation with the structure, the systems that veterans had to follow every day, the absolute need for operational excellence. And when you transfer that to the franchise model, that essentially is the basic tenets of being successful in franchising. So it was a great foresight by Don back then. His daughter, Dina Dwyer Owens, and an IFA past chair and the current chairwoman and CEO of the Dwyer Group, along with Mary Kennedy Thompson, president of Mr. Reuter, and IFA VetFran chair, and Beth Solomon, our VP of Strategic Initiatives and Industry Relations, have done an absolute terrific job in building out this initiative. We know it's the right thing to do both by veterans, and it's good business, as I mentioned, based on the qualities that are needed to be successful in franchising. So that's going full steam and tremendous momentum coming out of the convention. We had former Staff Sergeant Shiloh Harris, who's a wounded warrior who served in Iraq and Afghanistan, and who was severely injured by an IED, a road blast, and lost several of his colleagues. Only 2 lived in the unit, and this young man is doing so much to give encouragement to other wounded warriors and veterans who are having a tough time transitioning back into civilian life. So as franchising, we have a lot to be proud of. We have a track record of being successful with veterans, and we hope that by what we're doing, we're going to lead other industries to do the same. Because as our ads say, pushing our bill in Congress, Help Our Veterans Own Franchises Act, they fought for us. Now it's time to fight for them. And speaking of the bill, Paul, we're gaining co-sponsors at a pretty steady rate, and this is a bill that would offer 25% discount on the initial franchise fee, give a tax credit to that prospective veteran franchisee up to 25% of the initial franchise fee, not to exceed $100,000. So that's sponsored by Senator Bob Casey, a Democrat from Pennsylvania, and Congressman Aaron Schock, a Republican from Illinois. And it's also part of the AGREE Act that was introduced by Senators Marco Rubio, Republican, Florida, and Senator Chris Coons, Democrat, Delaware. On those things where both Democrats and Republicans agreed were good for the economy, good for business, and jump-starting this economic downturn that we've been in. So we're proud of those efforts, and we're going to continue to work on those efforts.
Well, certainly fantastic efforts, inspiring stories for sure that were shared. Just a great overall initiative, and Franchise Today is happy to participate in the effort. We have Lonnie Helgerson, who, as you know, is a well-known franchise executive and has been instrumental in working with VetFran. I believe he headed the committee for a couple of years, and I know continues to work with military and franchising. And Lonnie will be my guest on Franchise Today on March 1st, and Joe's put together a great format for that show, and I think it's just another great way to bring military and franchising front and center. Joe, can you give us a little insight into that show?
Well, the idea of having Lonnie on the show is to kind of give us a perspective or retrospective on what's been going on with VetFran, but also what are the key characteristics of having a best practices program within your franchise organization for implementing and recruiting qualified veterans that fit. I mean, just because you're recruiting a veteran doesn't mean that's the only criteria. You're looking for specific skill sets. How do you take a look at skill sets from the military that may be attributes that are going to be beneficial for that franchisee's success within your franchise system, and being able to mine through the veterans, and also generally how to reach the veterans. I mean, they have to know about these programs. You still have to recruit. It's just not enough to put it on your website that you have a little badge that says VetFran. You got to go out there and go after them.
You're absolutely right, Joe. And first I'd say, Paul, to your comments, Lonnie Helgerson has done a great job over the years of bringing attention to VetFran and helping to grow it out. And the other thing I would say to Joe's point is that's why we had for the first time a VetFran pavilion at the IFA show, and we're going to look next year, I think, to get this, right entrenched in the middle of the exhibit floor, so we can really drive even more traffic to it next year. And so Joe's absolutely right. How do we connect with those veterans? And so that VetFran pavilion, had folks in there like military and a lot of the companies that look to recruit. And we had representatives from the Department of Defense and VA there as well, and all the companies that are supporting it. So making that linkage, working with the White House Office of Technology and the U.S. Chamber in terms of how we, attract, monitor the progress and benchmark that is going to be a critical component. And finding those veterans, to Joe's point, with various skill sets is going to be important as well in terms of linking them up to the right opportunities. And so what I would say to your viewers is that, you can see the progress we've made by going on VetFran.com, and hopefully folks can see that progress and hopefully have an inclination to want to jump in and support it. Again, this is something the whole industry needs to get behind. This is not a political issue. When you see the White House and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce partnering, on something like this, it's really a great thing to see. And so it's nice in Washington where something positive is happening on behalf of our nation's veterans, and there's politics that isn't involved, which there should never be, because these folks have risked, and many, in fact, have given the ultimate sacrifice so that we can have the liberties and freedom back home here in the United States to pursue whatever it is we want to pursue in our lives. And so I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit more about that.
Very well said, Steve. We're on Franchise Today with IFA CEO and President Steve Caldeira, talking about franchising in action. Steve, franchising really has been out in the public's eye a lot lately with CBS Undercover Boss. And I know even tomorrow night, Checkers is going to be on. Last week it was the Dwyer Group with Dina Dwyer-Owens. Not too long ago, there was Shelley Sun and Bright Star. How do you feel about franchising being front and center and, in the public's eye? Certainly it's got to be good for franchising long term.
Absolutely, and Steve Joyce from Choice Hotels has also been a part of that, and so the majority of companies, a good percentage anyway, probably more than other industries, have been franchising companies. So I think, look, anytime that we can educate the public and the media about the virtues of franchising and the strong economic contributions we make to the U.S. economy, I think that's terrific. And, we've always fought here in Washington, Paul. People maybe look at a McDonald's or a Yum Brands or a ServiceMaster or some of the big companies that we have and think corporate America. And part of our job has been to educate them that, look, there are franchisors, and in some cases these can be really big companies. But in most cases, they're primarily franchise businesses at the local level in every congressional district, all 435 of them across the United States. And so that's why we've been working so hard to build out our Franchise Congress program, which is having at least one local ambassador in each congressional district across all 50 states, so that they can be a voice and go talk to their local elected official, whether it's at the state or federal level, both in the House of Reps and the U.S. Senate as well, in terms of why a lot of these issues that have been promulgated either legislatively or regulatorily are onerous, costly, and have negative effects on their business. And rather than enabling job growth and economic output, it's been stifling it. And, when you throw in all of the partisan rhetoric and the negative, rancor that I talked about, it just leads to gridlock. And I think the American people really have come to a precipice in terms of, we need to move the ball down the field. And you look at Congress with an approval, rating of somewhere between 9 and 11%. I'm talking both sides of the aisle, and a president that, for this point in time, pretty low, 41, 42% approval rating. It's disconcerting to a lot of people, and folks are not, happy that we can't get together and work to solve issues and provide tools and solutions and ideas that are going to advance this country. So, 2012 will be a better year economically, I think, overall for the U.S. economy and specifically for franchising. And, we are slated for 2.1% growth in terms of jobs, and that means 168,000 new jobs according to our economic forecast. 1.9% growth in terms of units. That would be 14,000 new units. 5% growth in terms of economic output, approximately 37 billion. And we're also projected to outpace the overall U.S. economy by 3 percentage points, 4.8% to 1.8% in terms of GDP. And I think it's also should be enlightening for your readers to know that franchising is now responsible for 3% of all U.S. GDP. So we continue to grow despite that lack of access to credit that we talked about at our first Small Business Lending Summit last year. We'll have another one on September 17th. We're continuing to build alliances with the lending community like never before, make them understand that we create jobs faster than non-franchised businesses, but our members also need to be what we call better bank-ready borrowers in this new economic lending environment, if you will. And so, and we also need to understand that banks have been going through a stricter regulatory environment through Dodd-Frank. That borrowers have less collateral than they have in the past, and we still have unemployment over 8%. When you throw in the underemployed and the part-timers and those that have given up looking for work, you're talking 15, 16%. That's huge. It's still a major issue in this country. And so when we had a $2 billion lending shortfall last year, equating to 20%, and that meant 18 to 10,000 new units not opened up. It meant 82,000 direct jobs not created, 160 to 200,000 direct and indirect jobs not created. So that's why we've been working so hard to educate the lending community, learn more about what's the issues they're dealing with, and vice versa from their standpoint. So the difference this year is that we've brought in the Financial Services Roundtable, which represents the top 100 banks in the United States, from J.P. Morgan Chase and Bank of America all the way down. We still have our friends at the Consumer Bankers Association, who represent a lot of the community banking interest, as well as national banks. We've got the National Association of Government Guaranteed Lenders that represents all the SBA-approved lenders. And so we have a new smallbusinesslendinghub.com website where we offer a lending toolkit. We're about to come out with a new lending template put together by the Consumer Bankers Association and led by their Small Business Committee. They're now starting to track many banks now and lending institutions franchise loans within their small business portfolio, so we can track the success of our loans within the banking community. And we're going to continue to work to make sure that we have a strong SBA, which during this economic downturn, Paul and Joe, has been really the lender of first resort in many cases, as opposed to in the past where it might have been viewed as a lender of last resort. So great respect for the work that Karen Mills, the SBA administrator, and her team have done to provide higher loan limits now permanently from $2 million to $5 million. It's part of the President's Small Business Jobs Act. But until we get that commercial lending spigot loosened, we're not going to be able to advance beyond the forecasted approximate 2% growth for our industry. But despite that, we still are a bright light in a still challenging economic recovery. But again, it's these regulations that whether it's Dodd-Frank or what the NLRB is trying to do in terms of backdoor things like card check and move up elections, ambush elections, and have micro unions now, and do what they couldn't do through the legislative process and backdoor it through the NLRB. All these issues, when you put them in totality, credit, the impact of what the health care law is going to be on small businesses, and what is comprehensive tax reform going to look like, Paul? 80% of our members are LLCs or S-Corps. They run their income through their business. So you can't have corporate tax reform that, like the President's talking about, without individual comprehensive tax reform. I saw Congressman Paul Ryan talking last night on Greta Van Susteren on Fox News, saying that potentially small businesses could, because they file as S-Corps or LLCs, potentially could have their tax bill go up to 44%. I mean, that's outrageous. So, that's why small business needs to stay focused. That's why we need to support the PAC, and that's why the IFA, and credit to its board members, have allocated more resources in terms of advocacy. We've added several new positions here in GR and public policy, and upgraded the positions in many cases, as well as our communications and marketing efforts as well. We've added a new digital communications function to keep abreast and out front of social media and digital communications for our members and how best to promote the IFA. So, we're really stepping up, I think, and when you see the optimism that you guys saw down in Orlando, I think it's because maybe folks see a little bit better economic climate coming through, and maybe they also see a really hardworking, dedicated, vastly productive IFA team that is focused on the right issues at the right time, and getting high visibility in terms of media, both broadcast and print and online, like we haven't had in a long, long time. So we're running on all cylinders, but again, there's always room for improvement, and we're going to continue to stay focused on those issues that protect, promote, and enhance this great franchising industry.
Very well said. Joe and I both attended the first Small Business Lending Summit last year in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
What specifically is on the agenda for this year's summit? And I believe it's April 17th, correct?
Yeah, it's April 17th back here in Washington. And again, we'll have members of Congress, we'll have representatives from the SBA, the federal government, FDIC. We've invited Ben Bernanke from the Fed. The White House will be involved, and all the lending institutions will be involved. We'll have members of Congress and their staff, and we'll continue to talk about what are some of the ways that we can eliminate some of the roadblocks and barriers to getting credit to those businesses, and we're talking specifically here franchise businesses that can help to accelerate the U.S. economy. So, last year we had an idea, we met, and out of it came an award-winning Small Business Lending Hub website, that lending toolkit I talked about, a soon-to-be released lending template from the Consumer Bankers Association, and now we've got the top 100 banks involved with franchising. We've got 30 new banking members like we've never had before. We never even had a lending institution that was a member of the IFA. I think we may have had one, GE Franchise Capital, and that's it. So now not only do we have GE Franchise Capital, but we have 29 or 30 new members that have stepped into the IFA because they see the value of partnering with us and the potential that franchising has for their lending community. Look, banks don't make money unless they lend money. And the more that we can show that franchising and prove that the risk of franchising is lower than non-franchise businesses, then we're going to be in a better spot than we have been. And so that's why we're working so hard to come up with the research, relative to the cost of health care on our industry, doing our small business lending matrix and analysis with Fran data so we can continue to put in front of lawmakers and policymakers the impact of onerous legislative and regulatory initiatives. So we're going to continue to do these things until we can get that credit loosened up where we can really start to get to. If we can't get to pre-recession levels in terms of lending, I think that whole environment's changed for good. But I think if we can get back 60 to 75% of the lending ability that we had pre-recession, then I think our industry will begin to really thrive again moving forward.
Joe, did you have a question regarding the Small Business Lending Summit, or actually regarding access to capital?
Well, I do. And while I was in attendance at the event last year, one of the hot topics of discussion was the nonconformity or disparity in what different lenders were expecting from prospective borrowers. And I'm curious to maybe, if Steve, you could expand on what this lending template would be, and will it actually bring uniformity to the lending process for SBA 7A and 504 loans?
Well, that's the goal, Joe. And without putting the cart before the horse, we're going to announce. I'll be speaking down along with Daryl Johnson from Fran Data and Shelley Sun from Brightstar. I believe it's March 19th down in Austin, Texas, at the Consumer Bankers Association live conference, and I think that's 800 to 1,000 folks within the banking community. And so, details of that are going to come out very shortly. But the goal is to make it an easier process, a more understandable process, and a process that can be expedited. And when we know what banks are looking for in this new economic climate, and banks know more about franchising, then that only means that we're going to enhance our capability to increase access to credit. And so I think when we announce the new lending template, I think there'll be a lot of folks in our industry that will applaud the work that's been done. It's been led by Joe DiNicola, Senior Vice President of Small Business Banking for Bank of America, and working closely with their Small Business Committee and the stakeholders from the other groups as well. So, I think we're less than a month away from releasing that, and I think the goal is to make it easier to understand and to expedite the process with a better understanding of franchising and also with a better understanding now from our perspective of what the banks need to be those better bank-ready borrowers I referenced earlier. So stay tuned, Joe. It's coming.
Well, I think it would be a welcomed improvement to the current environment because streamlining this process, I can tell you from personal experience that having franchisees that are putting a loan package into a lender and wanting to take that same loan package and deliver to another lender, only to find out that the second lender wants it in their format, which is completely different than what they've already structured, which creates, a mountain of work just to put the application in. And if it were more of a universal application, maybe with some addendums for the specific lenders for that,
right,
that outlier information, that would be highly productive, and it also creates some competition by the lenders for the loans because they compete. I mean, at least they used to.
No, absolutely, and that's the whole goal. And the great thing, Joe, about this is it's just not Bank of America sitting on the Consumer Bankers Association Small Business Committee. It's U.S. Bank, it's TD Bank, it's major bank, Susquehanna Bank, Regions Bank. It's all these banks that you and I, BBA, VA, Compass Bank, all the MB&T, all these banks that we know very well are all part of this committee that's been working so diligently, since last summer on this initiative. So, you said, Steve, I think Paul mentioned, what do you want to get out of this second Small Business Lending Summit? Well, look, we started a website. We got that lending toolkit. We're going to have this template finished. We're putting bankers and borrowers together at various events. We go to their events. They come to our events now. I'm sitting on their panels. They're sitting on our panels. And our members are sitting on their panels. And so we're going to continue to look to build on that in the second summit that's coming up on April 17th, and also to continue to remind our friends on Capitol Hill and within the administration and in the government agency world that there are things that you can do to make it easier for us to enable growth as opposed to stifling it, as I mentioned earlier. And so that's all on the advocacy front. So we'll run down two tracks here. One is trying to create private sector solutions working with the lending community. The second will be what we do each and every day, which is trying to educate those members on Capitol Hill what's important to small business. And I don't have to tell you two gentlemen that 64% of all net new jobs in America come from small businesses, 500 employees or less. So that's our job, and we're going to continue to remind folks of why it's important to keep an ear to the ground on franchise small businesses.
It was a breath of fresh air at Monday's Super Session at the IFA Convention to hear David Novak, Chairman and CEO of Yum Brands, which as we know is the world's largest restaurant company, as he shared why he devotes so much of his time to personally training company management and franchisees in leadership skills. And I think, it's too often than not we get involved in these type of events and we hear a lot about, franchise development and franchise sales. And it was nice to take a step back and talk about the people, talk about the ways of getting people where they need to be, supporting franchisees, because obviously they're the backbone of everything. If they don't succeed, obviously we don't succeed at a higher level. What concerns outside of lending and outside of some of the issues that you pointed out, what other concerns are you hearing that are keeping franchisors and franchisees up at night?
Well, let me just comment on David Novak for a moment. He truly is a great leader. I think he's perennially in the top 30 worldwide CEO list, and how he's led that company from a values and character perspective is the envy of many CEOs, and he spoke to his proven philosophy of why and how, quite frankly, it is so important to take people with you. To your point, Paul, how do you instill leadership? How do you develop the next generation of leaders? How do you create an environment that fosters good communication between the franchisor and their franchisees and all the brands that they have? So, and the energy and passion in which David delivers his remarks, he's the real deal. And to get him to come this year, was a real coup for us, and we are so appreciative of that. So to your question, what keeps our industry up at night? I think, look, first and foremost, our industry remains strong and it's still a tough environment, but it's the public affairs, the public policy issues, increasingly. At the state and federal level in an economic and public policy environment that is still very fragile. And so, we need to continue. And I think, if you look at how franchisors have been working with their franchisees, and I know firsthand because I was a part of this while at Dunkin' Brands working for John Luther and Nigel Travis, is that, we worked really hard with them on educating them on the public policy issues so we could get them engaged at the local level. We worked really hard with them and our supply chain partners to take cost of goods out of stores to increase franchisee profitability. At the end of the day, if franchisees aren't successful, ultimately the franchisor is not going to be successful. And that's not a recipe or prescription that I don't think anyone wants. So I think, the IFA, from where we sit, we're going to continue to talk about franchisee inclusion, and recruiting more multi-unit franchisees and giving them tools and services to succeed, also engaging them at the federal level and the local level in terms of public policy engagement, because these really are the folks that Congress and elected officials want to hear from, are the small business owners. So what keeps me up at night is making sure that we as an association have the resources and the right people in place to protect, promote, and advance this industry during a tough economic and public policy climate. And I continue to say, Paul and Joe, that we are an association, first led by Don DeBolt, and then Matt Shea, building on Don's success, and now we're just trying to take it to another level in terms of upping the ante relative to being bold and in certain areas in order to lead our industry out of this economic downturn. And increasingly, because of the efforts and resources we're pouring in, we are becoming more and more of a go-to source, both on Capitol Hill, a legislative advocacy standpoint, and a media standpoint. We had more broadcast media appearances last year, I would say, than 90% or 95% of the trade associations here in Washington. So we continue to fight, maybe not one class above our weight class, but maybe two or three now. And so and that's important because you have to continue to provide the ROI and the value add for members in this kind of environment, because if you lose them, it's going to be tough to get them back. And we can't afford that, and that's why we need to continue to work hard to provide that value and turnkey solutions that are going to help grow and strengthen their business.
Well, certainly the ROI is becoming more and more evident as the almost record attendance at the IFA convention displayed, without a doubt in my mind. And it was really interesting, exciting, and great to see technology being brought out into the mainstream.
Right.
There was a lot of things around technology at this show. Of course, it ended with Speaker Guy Kawasaki sharing his high-tech industry marketing and business management savvy. which was really great. It was also, I loved seeing the efforts pay off of the technology committee leader Ken Colburn and Lee Plave. I know when they went out to see Google and Facebook, that seemed like a very monumental task, and kudos to them and to the IFA for bringing Facebook and Google not only to the IFA membership, but getting them to speak at the Technology Summit. Again, standing room only at the summit, and I thought that was great. How important is it to bring brands along the likes of Google and Facebook to the IFA ranks?
Well, I think it's critically important, Paul. I mean, the fact that Google and Facebook would now become members of IFA says they see the value in who we are as an industry. But at the same time, you two guys know this better than me. The world is a different place it's a much smaller world now because of social media and digital communications. In fact, we've just upgraded a position that was a director of marketing position, and now it's a senior director of marketing and digital communications because we see the power of the social media network and digital communications and how consumers can help to drive product and perspective and people to various brands based on their experiences. So your guy Kawasaki, who worked for Steve Jobs, was absolutely I thought brilliant in his presentation. He worked for Steve Jobs as the chief marketing officer on two different occasions. So to get folks like Google and Facebook, and to have guys like Ken Colburn and Lee Plave, who, by the way, now serve on our Blue Sky Committee, which is a committee outside of our strategic planning committee that's looking 5, 8, 10 years down the road, saying, IFA, who do you want to be and why, and what's it going to take to get there so we can stay out in front of the issues and best plan for existing, but more importantly, potentially emerging issues that could arise. And when you've got two folks on the committee with a technological expertise of Ken and Lee, that speaks to the commitment of the IFA to stay front and center on these issues, and we're going to continue to do that. So technology is critical, and to have Google and Facebook, well, I don't know that it can get much better than that. To your point, Paul.
Yeah, I don't think they can. But what really impressed me, besides, of course, Ken and Lee's commitment and experience well beyond the technical side. I mean, the business and entrepreneur type of passion that both of them have, I really think is critical and certainly appreciated. What really impressed me with Facebook and with Google is their desire to learn as much as they can about franchising and be able to adapt, learn, and be able to participate within franchising where it's relevant, obviously, to franchising. And I know they, on the franchise, on the IFA site at franchise.org/socialtech, there's a lot of information regarding technology, as well as Facebook put out a email address, ifamembers@fb.com, if you have any questions or concerns about Facebook and all their growing number of changes and how it affects you as a franchisor or franchisee. Again, ifamembers@fb.com. Send in your information or questions or comments, and they'll respond. And I think when you look at the magnitude of the size of companies like Google and Facebook, I think that's just a tremendous initiative and effort that they're putting through to listen to what franchising has to say and be able to adapt accordingly. Kudos again to Lee Plave and Ken Colburn for spearheading that. And I know it took a lot more than just their efforts, and it was the overall efforts of the IFA. And I'm looking forward to bigger and greater things there as well. You know, Steve,
you're absolutely right. I want to make one comment on that and close up the point. And also, Jason Yusko he's our director of information technology, has done a great job. Matt Haller, our senior director of communications, Jenna Weisbord in our communication shop have done a great job working hand in hand. So it is two very unique partnerships And Paul, you're absolutely right. This is so critical to what we do as an industry and an association moving forward, and that's why the focus will stay top of mind.
You brought up an important name in franchising in the last year, Jack Earl. Not
Yes.
only was he busy during Franchising Gives Back, I think that was probably a relaxing moment for him in a very trying year for franchising. And I think I know Jack has been a key partner of yours during the past year. And I do want to say to Jack that he did a great job, a great effort. Not only did he have responsibility for his own business, but definitely exuded an unbelievable amount of responsibility and effort towards the IFA and its membership. And I definitely express my thanks and gratitude to him as well.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, Jack was, I had known Jack a little bit, having worked at Dunkin' and been on the IFA board for a brief amount of time while I was at Dunkin' Brands. And look, with Jack, it's all about, he got involved with the IFA because of the advocacy component. He is a first-class individual. He was a great representative for us this past year. 7-unit McDonald's, multi-unit McDonald's franchisee who could speak firsthand to the impact of onerous and legislative and regulatory activity, and just a tireless advocate. He had goals of making sure that we did more to advance franchisee inclusion in the association, a major priority of Jack's, and we're going to begin to infuse new resources in terms of some permanent positions within the association that will really seek to both recruit and educate and get engaged from the IFA's perspective, multi-unit and in some cases multi-concept franchisees. That was a big focus of Jack. International was a big focus of Jack. 70% of our members, guys, either do business or want to do business internationally. And so, we have to continue to figure out how do we stay out in front of providing information to those smaller to middle-sized franchisors that want to go international. The Yums of the world, the McDonald's of the world, they may not need so much our guidance and counsel, but we just finished a trade mission with 19 U.S.-based companies across several of our business category segments with the U.S. Commercial Service Division of the U.S. Department of Commerce, and it was very, very successful. And those trade missions we're going to continue to do that. Jack has been a big proponent and driver of that. He will be the new chair of our international committee, and he has developed, along with myself, and worked very hard over the last couple of years. It'll be 2 years in June now that I'll be at the IFA, and we have worked really hard to build bridges with our peers and other trade associations around the world as part of the World Franchise Council. In fact, Jack and I will be in Mexico City in a couple of weeks, where we now, meaning the IFA, chairs the Strategic Planning Committee, so we can continue to stay engaged and out front on the important issues of international. And then I say lastly, Jack made sure, along with great support of the officer corps and the board, that I and my team had the resources necessary to build and add new positions here within government affairs and public policy and communications and marketing. Jack is going to look back. He's a very humble guy, but as I said in my remarks, his legacy will last for a long time, and he served with distinction. And now I have the great honor and privilege of working with my former CEO and good friend John Luther from Dunkin' Brands, and we get along terrific, and we're aligned on the issues. And as is the officers and the board. We had a great board meeting this weekend. And so we're focused, we're dedicated, we're unified, we're aligned. And every day when I get here in my office in Washington, it's a new day in the war, on small business, the assault on small business that is happening. We're going to continue to stay out front and combat that the best we can.
Absolutely a great year in franchising and certainly a lot more to come. Jack Earl leaving as IFA chairman, certainly glad to hear that he's still going to be very active. John Luther, I had the pleasure of working with some on the convention committee, another great leader coming in. why don't we touch base on some of the IFA awards that went out at the convention? I know there was the Hall of Fame award.
Yeah.
Why don't you expand upon that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Well, Jim Amos this year was our Hall of Fame award winner. And, Jim is a past IFA chairman, just has been a stalwart in the franchising community for many years. You might have saw the clip of American Franchise, which is a joint effort by the British Broadcasting Company, BBC, and Salcalow Plow Productions. And Jim is sort of a creative consultant to the concept. And it will be a show, hopefully, it's being pitched to the networks next week in Los Angeles. I'll be a part of that, along with Jim, that will award a franchise to obviously someone who meets the criteria to run a franchise. We already have, and that'll be a reality-based TV show. This is from the producers of Dancing with the Stars, so these folks really know what they're doing, and it would showcase and highlight. We talked earlier about Undercover Boss, Paul, but this would, giving away a franchise each and every week of both an iconic and emerging brands, and having creative input, and being the governing body for the show, meaning IFA. You can't put a price on that to promote the great attributes of franchising. So, Jim Amos has led that charge, and we're excited about the possibility with American Franchise. Susan Beth Black, won the Bonnie Levine Award. She epitomizes the next generation of leadership within the franchise industry. She is so energetic and passionate and dedicated in terms of advancing the IFA's mission, and just really someone who speaks from the heart. And has so much passion around franchising. She's a member of our board, and so well deserved for her mentorship of women and support of the IFA's mission. So those are a couple of the highlights in terms of the awards. And Mike Roman from ExxonMobil receiving a big award from our Educational Foundation, our Top Leadership Award, for all that they have done relative to diversity and inclusion initiatives. So to receive our top award from our Educational Foundation for Mike was very special for many of us. Just overall, the sense, in chatting with people, in the lobby checking out Paul and at the airport, because, you got 3,000 people leaving Orlando and you just run into the same people at the Orlando airport. It was just really, for me personally and for us as an association, just really gratifying to feel the positive feedback and energy on what we're doing, and the encouragement to keep doing what we're doing, and that's what we're going to keep doing, because that's what our members pay us to do, and that's what we enjoy doing, and hopefully we're making a difference. I know people in Washington are noticing what the IFA is doing, and I think our members are seeing some real strong enthusiasm and a proactive attitude coming out of the IFA here. And it's my job to make sure that we maintain that and continue to have the resources and the staff to carry it through, to give our members the best chance at growing and succeeding their business on behalf of our industry.
Absolutely, and I also want to reach out and congratulate all of this year's graduates of the CFE, as well as a couple of IFA staff members, Paul Rocchio and Scott Lair.
Yep, absolutely.
It speaks volumes that IFA staff is also getting CFE designation. Steve, I really appreciate you taking the time out of what's probably an extremely hectic schedule and being our guest today. Look forward to talking with you in the future, and I look forward to visiting with you again in the future. Thanks again.
You're welcome, Paul and Joe, and as always, thank you for what you guys do to promote franchising and for allowing us the opportunity to talk a little bit about some of the issues that we're working for on behalf of the industry. Truly appreciate it.
Our pleasure.
Take care, guys.
Bye-bye. For sure.
Bye.
Well, Joe, another show in the books. Appreciate the effort that you make in putting together a great show. I wouldn't be able to do it without you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it very much, and it's great to collaborate and promote franchising.
Well, next week we have Nancy Weingartner, editor at Franchise Times, and we'll be doing a recap of the IFA convention. She'll tell us about things going on that were going on at the exhibit floor. Again, until then, my name is Paul Segreto, wishing you the best, the very best in this great thing we call franchising. Franchise Today is out.
When you're part of a military family, you understand sacrifice and support. So at American Public University, we honor your dedication by extending our military tuition savings to your extended family. Parents, spouses, legal partners, siblings, and dependents all qualify for APU's preferred military rate of just $250 per credit hour for undergraduate and master's level programs. American Public University. Value for the whole family. Learn more at apu.apus.edu/military.